The Nature of Reality by Bandra. Welcome to Conversations That Awaken, a podcast where science, philosophy, psychology, mysticism, and direct experience come together to explore life's deepest questions. What is reality? Who are you beyond your thoughts, beliefs, and stories? Is consciousness merely a product of the brain, or is it the very foundation of existence itself? Join us as we journey beyond assumptions, challenge conventional thinking, and investigate the mysteries that have fascinated humanity for thousands of years. This is more than a conversation. It is an invitation to awaken to a deeper understanding of yourself, the universe, and the extraordinary reality we all share. Welcome to Conversations That Awaken.
Usually when we talk about exploring the great mysteries of the universe, we picture something vast and external. We imagine an astronomer standing in a freezing observatory, peering through a massive telescope at a distant galaxy.
Right, looking for just a faint glimmer of light.
Exactly. Or a physicist staring at a blackboard covered in complex equations, trying to decipher a black hole. It's always out there. It's always distant.
Yeah, the classic posture of human inquiry relies entirely on that separation. We stand here as the observer, and we look out at the great other, which is the physical universe.
It's an object we are trying to bring into focus through a lens or a formula. We build this psychological and mathematical distance.
I mean, we assume the mystery is separated from us by billions of light years across a vacuum, or buried incredibly deep within the subatomic realm, places our biological senses just can't reach.
But if you turn your attention inward, you stop looking at the stars, and you look at the very mind that is perceiving the stars.
Yeah.
And suddenly, that whole dynamic completely collapses.
It really does, because you are looking at a landscape that is the most intimate thing imaginable, yet at the exact same time, it is entirely baffling.
Right. The tool we are using to look is the very thing we are trying to see.
The simple, undeniable fact that you are aware.
Yes, that you listening to this right now are experiencing this exact moment.
To guide this exploration, we are working with a really fascinating set of excerpts from an upcoming book. It's titled The Nature of Reality by Bandra.
And these texts bridge the cosmological and the personal in a rather profound way.
They do. The foundational premise Bandra establishes is something that often goes completely unnoticed simply because it's so ever-present. Every single thing we know appears exclusively within consciousness.
Okay, let's unpack this, because it sounds a bit like a philosophical riddle at first.
It can sound that way, yeah.
But when you break it down, it's a concrete reality. When we think of galaxies, we are experiencing an image or a concept of a galaxy within our consciousness.
Right. When we write out a mathematical equation, that equation is being formulated, held, and understood entirely within consciousness.
Scientific theories, memories of childhood, even the physical sensation of the chair you're sitting on right now. Without consciousness, none of these things could be known.
It is the ultimate prerequisite for existence as we define it. But we have to make a careful distinction here.
Go ahead.
Acknowledging that everything is known through consciousness doesn't automatically prove that consciousness created the universe in a literal physical sense.
Yeah, we aren't suggesting a magical mind just dreamed the cosmos into existence out of the void.
Exactly. But it does highlight that consciousness occupies a unique, highly problematic position in our scientific framework. Unlike stars or planets or atoms, it's playing a dual role.
Science is incredibly adept at studying things from the outside. You can measure the mass of a planet, track a comet's trajectory, or measure the half-life of an isotope.
But consciousness is fundamentally different. It can only be known from the inside.
You can't put awareness on a petri dish. You can't put it under a microscope and measure its width.
No, you really can't.
To really grasp the gravity of this, let's run a thought experiment and dial the clock back to the universe before life emerged. We have this unimaginably vast arena.
Let's look at stellar nucleosynthesis, for example. You have massive clouds of primordial hydrogen collapsing under their own gravity.
The pressure and heat at the core become so intense that hydrogen atoms are physically crushed together to form helium, releasing enormous amounts of energy. A star ignites.
And these stars burn for millions of years. Eventually, the massive ones exhaust their fuel, their cores collapse, and they detonate in supernovas.
Forging heavy elements like carbon, oxygen, and iron in the sheer violence of the explosion and scattering them across the void. Entire epic cosmic dramas are unfolding.
It is a universe of staggering kinetic energy and immense scale. The physical laws are dictating the dance of matter and energy perfectly.
But for billions of years, there was absolutely nobody there to appreciate any of it. There was no poetry being written about those nebulas.
None at all.
There was no mathematics being used to calculate the trajectory of the debris. There were no questions being asked. The universe existed, undeniably, but it was entirely, profoundly unaware of its own existence.
Then we see a monumental shift. On at least one small, rocky planet orbiting a very average yellow dwarf star, matter begins to organize itself.
We move from inorganic elements forged in those supernovas to living systems.
We see the emergence of single-celled organisms, eventually evolving into complex eukaryotic life. Over hundreds of millions of years, biological complexity scales up.
Simple nerve nets in jellyfish evolve into centralized nervous systems. Brains develop, adding layers of complexity.
Right, the brainstem, the limbic system, and eventually the highly folded neocortex. Out of this long chain of biological development, a being appears.
A being capable of stopping, looking around, and asking, well, what is all this?
Exactly.
It's like a massive, beautifully constructed theater where an epic play has been running for billions of years in pitch black. The actors are moving, the drama is peaking, but there's absolutely zero audience.
Completely empty.
And then suddenly, a piece of the wooden stage itself sprouts eyes, looks up at the performance, and starts applauding.
The stage itself becomes the audience. Chronologically, this is not merely a biological milestone, it is a cosmological milestone.
Wow, yeah.
In that moment, the universe essentially grew sensory organs and looked back at itself. The moment reality asks about itself, the entirely new phenomenon of self-reflection appears.
Which brings us to the dominant scientific question of our time. How does blind, unthinking, unfeeling matter suddenly transition into a state of subjective awareness?
The dominant scientific view most of us learn is that consciousness is simply an inevitable consequence of increasing complexity.
If you take dead matter and you arrange it in exactly the right way, if you make the neural networks dense enough, awareness just naturally emerges.
The text notes an analogy often used here. The brain becomes conscious just as a furnace becomes hot when you ignite the fuel. It's an emergent property.
The emergent property argument is compelling on the surface. We see emergent properties in nature all the time. One water molecule is not wet.
Right, wetness is an emergent property of billions of water molecules interacting at a specific temperature. The standard model of neuroscience applies this logic to the brain.
Individual neurons are not conscious, but a network of 86 billion neurons firing produces consciousness. However, a massive conceptual hurdle remains.
Science is remarkably good at explaining behavior and physical states. We can map how an organism reacts to stimuli. We can trace the visual pathway from the retina to the occipital lobe.
And explain how the brain processes edges, motion, and color.
But the real challenge is explaining experience.
Okay, let's look at that furnace analogy, or maybe a modern thermostat, because I think the complexity argument skips over something fundamental.
How so?
Well, a thermostat processes temperature data, just like the nervous system in my hand does when I touch a hot stove. It takes in data about the ambient temperature, compares it to a set point, and turns on the heat.
It is processing information and executing a behavior based on stimuli.
Right. But when the furnace gets hot, the machine doesn't feel cozy, it doesn't feel burned, it's just electrons moving through copper wire.
What's fascinating here is you are isolating the exact boundary where the standard physicalist model struggles.
Why should the biological wiring of a human brain magically cross the line from just processing data to actually having a feeling? If we look closely at a neuron, it's just a biological pump.
It pushes sodium ions out and pulls potassium ions in, creating a slight electrical charge.
Yeah, and when it fires, neurotransmitters are dumped across a tiny gap. That is a purely mechanical, chemical process. Why should a cascade of sodium ions feel like the crushing weight of grief?
Or the taste of a strawberry. Why should biological information processing feel like anything at all?
Exactly.
This is what the philosopher David Chalmers categorized as the hard problem of consciousness. The easy problems involve mapping the neural correlates of behavior, finding out which part of the brain lights up when you speak.
We will eventually solve those easy problems.
But the hard problem asks why any of this physical processing is accompanied by an inner life. Think of a digital camera. It captures light and color, processing visual information flawlessly.
It can even use AI to categorize the image as a sunset.
But the camera does not experience the sunset. It is dark inside.
There's no ghost in the machine enjoying the view. It's just a complex arrangement of parts doing a task.
The unresolved gap between objective physical mechanics and subjective experience forces us to reevaluate our foundational assumptions.
Because we can't explain how a collection of atoms produces the experience of falling in love, we have to look outside the standard paradigm.
We rely on objective measurement in science. We weigh, we measure, we calculate. But experience is inherently subjective. You are trying to weigh a feeling on a physical scale.
And the fundamental units of measurement simply don't translate. So we have to entertain a wilder, more profound possibility about the universe.
If the hard problem remains stubbornly unsolved by treating consciousness as a byproduct of matter, we might have the equation backward. What if consciousness isn't produced by physical reality?
What if consciousness is a fundamental characteristic of reality?
Like space or time or gravity.
We don't ask what biological process produces gravity, we just accept it as a foundational parameter of the physical universe.
Precisely. The hypothesis is that consciousness may not be a late-arriving accident of biological evolution. It might be woven into the very fabric of existence from the Big Bang.
This isn't just metaphysical speculation. It intersects with some of the most rigorous physics of the 20th century.
The theoretical physicist John Archibald Wheeler proposed a concept he called the participatory universe.
Wheeler is a massive figure. He worked with Niels Bohr. He coined the term black hole. He wasn't exactly a fringe thinker.
Far from it. Wheeler was deeply troubled by the implications of quantum mechanics, specifically the role of the observer. Classical Newtonian science assumed the universe was a giant clockwork mechanism ticking away independently.
And we were just passive witnesses peering through the glass.
But quantum mechanics shattered that assumption. Wheeler wondered if observers play a structural role in reality. He suggested our observation is a necessary component in its unfolding.
We have to be careful not to fall into pseudoscience here. We aren't saying that human consciousness magically conjures physical matter out of thin air.
No, Einstein famously joked about this, asking if the moon only exists when you look at it. The distinction is vital. We are not talking about solipsism.
To understand Wheeler's point, we have to look at the double-slit experiment. If you fire an electron at a barrier with two small slits, you expect it to act like a tiny bullet, right?
It should go through one slit or the other and leave a single mark on the screen, like firing a marble through a doorway.
But that's not what happens. Over time, they build up an interference pattern. The single electron is somehow acting like a wave, passing through both slits simultaneously.
It only becomes a solid particle when it hits the back screen. It's existing as a wave of probability. This is mathematically described by the Schrödinger equation.
But here is the critical part that drove Wheeler to his theory. If you place a detector at the slits to observe which slit the electron actually goes through, the electron instantly stops acting like a wave.
The interference pattern disappears. It acts like a regular particle going through just one slit.
The mere act of measuring it, of extracting information from the system, forces the universe to collapse that wave of probability into a definite physical reality.
The observation forces the physical state to become determinate. It points to a universe where the observer and the observed are entangled. The observer is participating in the materialization of reality.
This changes everything about how we view our place in the cosmos. There is this staggering fit between the universe and human consciousness.
Think about it. A fish doesn't study marine biology. Trees don't write books about botany. Mountains don't develop geology.
Yet we humans study the cosmos. Within our tiny fraction of the 13.8 billion-year history of the universe, we have reconstructed events from billions of years before our own arrival.
A conventional view might just see this as a testament to the evolutionary power of the human brain. But a participatory universe suggests something much deeper.
Before we get completely lost in quantum physics, we have to bring up Joe Bandra here, because Bandra points out something in his upcoming book that completely flips our perspective on human intelligence.
He really does. The insight Bandra offers is this perhaps reality is completely intelligible to us precisely because consciousness and the cosmos share a common foundation.
It's not a foreign landscape.
Exactly. The universe is not foreign to awareness. Awareness is simply one of the ways the universe expresses its own intrinsic nature.
Here's where it gets really interesting. We tend to think of human intelligence as an alien explorer landing in a strange universe, trying to pry open the secrets of a cold, dead cosmos.
Right, with our little toolkits of science and math.
But it's more like a lock and a key.
Yeah.
We aren't foreigners here. Our awareness is a key perfectly forged by the universe to fit the exact lock of its own mysteries.
If consciousness is fundamental, then our capacity to map the stars is just the universe engaging in self-discovery. But this brings us to a massive contradiction in our scientific pursuit.
The ultimate roadblock. If we are so perfectly designed to understand the universe, why is the experience of consciousness itself so impossible to pin down objectively?
To understand why this is structurally impossible, the text introduces the philosopher Thomas Nagel and his famous question, what is it like to be a bat?
Nagel used the bat to make a devastatingly simple point about the limits of objective science. Think about how a bat navigates. It uses echolocation.
It perceives the world through a sensory modality that is completely alien to human biology. The bat emits high-frequency sound waves from its larynx. These sound waves travel, strike a moth, and bounce back.
The bat's brain processes the time delay, the Doppler shift, and the minute differences in timing between the ears to pinpoint the exact location. It constructs a real-time acoustic map.
It's an astonishing feat of biological computing. And Nagel's point is that we can study all of this objectively. We can measure the exact hertz of the sound waves. We can map the bat's auditory cortex.
We can know everything there is to know about the bat from a third-person perspective.
But the actual experience of being the bat remains totally inaccessible to us. What does it feel like internally to perceive a moth in the dark through sound?
The first-person quality of the experience cannot be extracted through third-person observation. But let me push back on this, or at least play devil's advocate for a second.
Sure.
If we theoretically reach a point where we map every single firing neuron in a bat's brain or a human brain in real time, isn't the experience part just the final layer we haven't reached yet?
No, it's really not.
Or is it literally a different dimension of reality that a map can never capture by definition? Take an fMRI machine, we tell someone to think about a memory, and we watch their brain light up. Aren't we mapping the experience?
We are mapping the physiological correlate of the experience. An fMRI does not measure thoughts or feelings. It measures bold OVC signals, blood oxygen level dependent contrast.
Okay.
When a region of your brain becomes active, the neurons consume oxygen. Blood flow increases to that specific area to replenish it. Because oxygenated and deoxygenated blood have different magnetic properties, the scanner can pinpoint where blood flow is increasing.
So we are just watching the blood flow change in response to neural demand.
Exactly. We are looking at a highly sophisticated plumbing map of the brain. We are not seeing the memory itself. A map of a territory is not the territory.
You can have the most detailed map of New York City, down to every pebble, but looking at that map will never give you the subjective experience of standing in Times Square, feeling the cold rain.
The map is objective. The feeling is subjective. They exist in entirely different domains. This isn't a failure of science. It's because consciousness is the one unique thing through which everything else is known.
You cannot use a third-person tool to measure a fundamentally first-person phenomenon. Science requires stepping back to observe, but you cannot step back from consciousness because it's the very tool you are using to step back.
This realization brings about an unexpected convergence. Science, philosophy, psychology, and mysticism all seem to be pursuing different questions initially.
Operating in parallel lanes, often fiercely at odds with each other.
But eventually they approach the exact same mystery from different directions. The physicist looking for the fundamental nature of matter runs into quantum probability.
The philosopher runs into the limits of language. The psychologist runs into the mystery of awareness, and the mystic directly experiences the foundational nature of consciousness.
The deeper we look, reality looks less like disconnected objects and more like relationships, participation, and interdependence. Everything is woven together.
But this ultimate convergence inevitably turns the lens back on you, the listener. If we are an inseparable, aware piece of the cosmos, who exactly are we?
This brings us to the existential core of the text. The ultimate question that arises from this connection is, who am I? Not socially, biologically, or psychologically. Fundamentally.
To approach this, we have to look at a universal human condition.
Yeah.
Every single human being is continuously searching for something.
The objects change, but the search remains constant. The timeline of human seeking is remarkably predictable. Children seek approval from parents.
Then teens desperately seek identity, and adults seek success, security, meaning, happiness, and peace. People assume if I obtain the next thing, I will arrive.
We are wildly optimistic that the future will solve the present. But why does fulfillment fade so fast? Because the search is more deeply rooted than the object being pursued.
I can speak to this personally. When I got my first major job, I assumed I would finally feel complete. The day I got the offer, the dopamine rush was incredible. But a week later, my brain had already drawn a new target on the wall.
Right. To understand that, we have to look at the neurology of motivation. Dopamine is the molecule of pursuit, not reward. When you are striving, it creates a powerful drive. But once you acquire the object, the system shuts down.
The evolutionary purpose is survival. We are biologically engineered to be perpetually dissatisfied.
On a physical level, yes. If we connect this to the bigger picture, this perpetual motion machine translates into profound existential misunderstanding. We never question the movement itself, only the destination.
The philosopher Blaise Pascal made a devastating observation about this. He noted that people continually distract themselves with noise, entertainment, ambition, and conflict just to avoid sitting quietly with their fundamental condition.
And today, we have the most distractions in history. A person can easily spend 12 hours a day consuming information and never once actually encounter their own mind.
The outward search is sophisticated, but the inward search is entirely neglected. So what does this all mean? The analogy Bandra uses in the text makes it crystal clear.
It's a great analogy.
It's exactly like walking toward the horizon. You walk, it recedes, you keep walking, it recedes again. The problem isn't your walking speed or the distance. The problem is the structure of perception.
The horizon isn't a location you can arrive at. As long as you believe it is, you will exhaust yourself trying to reach it.
If we can't reach the horizon by chasing it, we have to turn around and look at the person doing the walking.
This is the crucial pivot, changing the question from what am I looking for to who is looking. This shifts the inquiry from acquiring something to investigating the structure of seeking itself.
The method of the Indian sages was exactly this. When a thought or fear arose, they didn't try to psychoanalyze it, they simply asked, to whom does this occur?
The surprising result of this ancient investigation is that you can find thoughts, emotions, memories, and beliefs. But the seeker itself proves entirely elusive.
It cannot be found as an object.
Imagine a detective assigned to a case where every single clue points back to the investigator. Every witness identifies the detective. The hunter and the hunted are the same.
It's like using a metal detector to try and find its own batteries.
Yeah.
The tool you are desperately sweeping across the ground is the very thing you were trying to locate.
Most inquiries have a clear subject and object, but self-inquiry collapses this distinction. The mind cannot grasp its own source because the source is prior to the mechanism doing the grasping.
Language completely fails here because words are meant to describe separate things, this and that, here and there. It's profoundly frustrating.
But the frustration is part of the mechanism. The process is more like archaeology than acquisition, removing false layers of identity rather than adding new knowledge.
When you finally realize you cannot find the seeker, what happens to that exhausting, lifelong search we've all been on? As this realization dawns, the search begins to slow down.
Not because answers were found, but because the urgency weakens. The compulsion to become something loses momentum. The endless project of self-improvement becomes less convincing.
This loss of striving can cause boredom, freedom, or confusion. Many people derive their entire identity from goals and forward progress.
But as the dust settles, you recognize the ultimate discovery across contemplative traditions. The seeker and the sought are not separate. The treasure and the treasure hunter are connected.
This brings the inquiry to a threshold where conceptual thought hits its natural limit and direct experience takes over.
And we are left with the final, simple, profound statement that echoes across centuries and cultures. I am.
I am.
The universe waking up 13.8 billion years ago and asking, what is this? Eventually matures, through billions of years of seeking, into a quiet, profound realization of simply existing. I am.
It's beautiful.
This raises an important question. If our core identity is this pure I am awareness, how does that change the way we live our incredibly busy modern lives?
It means stepping off the treadmill. You don't have to acquire the next promotion or the next spiritual retreat to exist meaningfully. The mere act of being aware is the grandest cosmic achievement.
You realize you are already the destination.
Let's briefly recap the incredible arc we've covered. We started with a lifeless universe, moved to the hard problem of consciousness, and discovered that awareness might be fundamentally woven into reality.
We examined the exhausting, dopamine-fueled trap of human seeking.
And finally collapsed the search by realizing the seeker is just pure presence. To you, the listener, thank you for bringing these brilliant sources to the table and going on this dense, rewarding journey.
It's been a profound exploration.
I want to leave you with a lingering thought. If John Archibald Wheeler is right, And this is truly a participatory universe where our conscious observation shapes reality. What happens to the universe itself when you finally stop endlessly seeking the future and simply rest in the realization of I am?
That's a fascinating question.
Does the cosmos around you quiet down too? That is something to sit with today. Next time you look up at the night sky, remember the awareness looking back.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who might benefit from the conversation. Your support helps us continue exploring the deepest questions of life, consciousness, and reality. I am Julia Carter, and it is my honor to introduce Joe Bandra, author, philosopher, speaker, healthcare technology pioneer, and lifelong explorer of life's questions. Through his writing, Joe bridges science, philosophy, psychology, spirituality, and direct experience in a search for truth. His first book, Finding Nevaeh, is a transformative journey of self-discovery and the search for lasting happiness. His second book, Body, Mind, and Machine, chronicles his remarkable career and the evolution of healthcare technology. His next book, The Nature of Reality, explores consciousness, existence, and the mysteries at the heart of human experience. Joe's work invites us to look beyond what we think we know and awaken to a deeper understanding of ourselves and the universe we inhabit.
Life often feels like an endless list of tasks, constant noise and distractions, pulling us in every direction. We're all searching for happiness, but what if we've been looking in the wrong places all along?
This was Nevaeh's journey. Lost in the noise, she felt cut off from the peace and happiness she longed for, until she met Joe Bandra, an unconventional, insightful philosopher with a different perspective. Jay, as he is simply known, didn't hand her a map. He gave her something far more valuable, a compass, a way to turn inward, navigate her own thoughts, and uncover the clarity hidden beneath the chaos.
Readers around the world have been touched and inspired by Finding Nevaeh.
Your journey to inner peace begins now. Get your copy of Finding Nevaeh, available on Amazon and at findingnevaeh.org, or listen to the audiobook on Audible, Spotify, Apple, and other platforms.